All right. Welcome everybody to SC2. I'm super grateful for the opportunity that I have to be giving this talk today. And I'm grateful for the opportunity and for the decision that you've made to be here at SC2. I remember SC2 being one of my always being my favorite conference of the year, one of anyway, where the messages I felt like were always on point, the energy was infectious, and I hope you've been feeling that throughout the event. I know the speakers before me have been absolutely incredible, and I know that the speakers that are going to wrap this up afterwards uh, for both days are going to be absolutely incredible as well. So, what the information, the goods that I'm going to be giving you today is on time management, and this is one of my very favorite subjects to give a talk on because it's been something that's been very impactful in my life, and it's a skill that I feel like has allowed me to be successful with Vector and really allowed a lot of my representatives to not only do well but really to thrive. And I feel like it's a skill that nobody can get too good at. And so to give you a little bit of an illustration of kind of what time management and how that's kind of played into my career with Vector, I started as a college student in 2015 in September, going into my sophomore year of school. So I was going into a 19 credit hour semester and I was going to be extremely busy. So right away, time management, being able to manage working part time at Vector and manage my school schedule was something that was extremely important to me. Uh, my first summer as a representative was in summer of 2016, and I was an assistant manager. So not only was I managing my time as an assistant manager in the office, but I was also managing my sales, and I had to balance both of those. When I opened up as a branch in 2017, I I was engaged, and I actually when I opened up, I was married. So through the process of getting ready to branch, I was taking helping my wife take care of a wedding, wrapping up finals. So I finished finals, got married, moved to my office territory in St. George, Utah, and ran a branch office. At the end of the summer, I had to pack everything back up, move my wife and I back up to my home territory, and I took over as a pilot sales manager for the next two campaigns as I was going through my senior year of college. So being able to manage all those things and have really good time management skills was something that I found is very important, and it's one of the things that's allowed me to be as successful as I have been. I've also trained three All-American scholarship winners, one with each campaign or one in each campaign. So I've helped students be very successful, and it's just one of the most important skills I think that students can really learn, and representatives and anybody for that matter. And like I said, nobody can be too good at time management. So first of all, as we get started, I want to talk about, well, just to give you a little bit outline of what I'm going to go over today. I'm going to talk about setting up your schedule. We'll talk about certain things that need to go in your schedule and kind of what order they need to go in. I'll also talk about some tips on time management. We'll talk about procrastination and a little bit about what plays into that. And then finally, I'll leave you with a little bit of a couple thoughts on being the architect of your life and the architect of your schedule. So as we jump right into this, let's talk about setting up your schedule. So out there exists an object lesson that you may have heard of before, by the way, about time management. So the object lesson goes as follows. There is a jar. There's a professor standing in front of his class, and he's got kind of multiple containers in front of him. So he takes one container and takes kind of larger size rocks and puts them into the jar, and then he asks the class, "Is the jar full?" And the class goes, "Yeah, the jar's full." And he pulls out the second container, and it's got some smaller rocks in it, some kind of medium-sized rocks, and he shakes them in there and works them in there around the bigger rocks, and he asks, "Is it full?" And the class goes, "Okay, yeah, now it's full." Then he pulls out another container and it's got gravel, and he starts shaking those little pebbles, the little gravel in there to fill in the gaps between what's already there. And then he asks the class again, "Is the class full?" And the class is, "Yeah, now it's full." And then he takes a container of sand and dumps the sand in there and shakes it in there and gets it in there nice and tight. And he's like, "Now is it full?" And the class is like, "Okay, yes, now it's full." And he's like, "No, it's not." So then he pulls out a Coke, he pulls the lid off and dumps it in there. And he says, "Now is it full?" And they say yes. And he's like, "That's right, because your life is never too full to have a Coke with a friend." So there's kind of two lessons that we can take away from this time management exercise. So kind of the 2 points that I want to make with this is, number one, your schedule should be dialed in. When it comes to making a schedule, there should be no empty space in your schedule. You can fit a lot more in your schedule than you think you can, and so there shouldn't be any empty time. And number two is the idea that you have to put things in your schedule in the right way to make them fit. For example, we know that if you fill your jar with gravel and sand first, you won't have space for the big rocks. And so, like, the jar is your life, and so it's important to fill your jar with things that are important to you and to fill it up intentionally. Because if you don't run the day runs you. That's a quote by Jim Rohn. And if you don't run your schedule will run you. And there's multiple other interpretations that you could take from this object lesson, but I'm going to share the way with you. I'm going to kind of break it down the way I teach it for my representatives when it comes to building a schedule, kind of very focused at a student representative kind of lifestyle. So when you're building a schedule, there are things that need to go in a certain order. Now, they're all equally important, but they have to go in a certain order. So I'm going to talk about have tos, need tos, should dos, and want tos, why they're important, where they fit, and how they really help you maximize your schedule. So as we jump into this, we're going to talk about have tos. So have tos, I'm going to define as something that has a specific time and an immediate negative consequence. So these are the things that need to go into your schedule first. They're things that are non-negotiable as far as what time they go into your schedule. For example, you've got things like classes, doctor's appointments, team meetings, non-negotiable as far as time goes. Your family dinner, right? That happens and mom says what time it is and you show up. Most everybody's pretty good at showing up to the have tos. Classes, like school, you have a specific time. It's a non-negotiable time as far as when you do that. The next is the need tos. Need tos don't have any specific time per se, but they still need to be completed by a certain deadline. For example, and there's immediate negative consequences if you don't do this. Sleeping. Technically, you don't have to sleep at any given time in a 24-hour period. You can choose when you sleep. You can choose when you eat. You can choose when you do homework in that 24-hour period. Phone time, demos. I should have put demos on the slide. Those are things that are need tos. You can plug those into your schedule wherever you like. There's not necessarily a specific time, but there is a negative consequence if that doesn't happen. For example, if homework's due at 11:59, then you have all day to take care of that. You can take care of it in the morning, lunch, evening. You get the idea. Most people are also pretty good at doing the need to things in life. The next one are should dos. Should dos do not have any specific time, but they do have immediate negative consequences. Or excuse me, and no immediate negative consequences, but they do have negative consequences. Let me give you an example here. Should dos are things that you should do proactively. For example, you should check the oil on your car. That's something you should do. If you don't do it today, it's no big deal. You don't do it tomorrow, okay, that's fine. You don't do it 5, 6, 10 months from now, but eventually when your car runs out of oil and the motor blows up, now all of a sudden that should do takes precedence over something else, and now it becomes a need to. Now you need to buy a new car. Or, for example, you should exercise every day. That is a should do. It's a preventative measure, right? That's a personal development thing as well. You should exercise every day. If you don't exercise today or tomorrow, okay, maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't exercise this week, couple weeks, couple months. But if you go long enough in your life without exercising, you're going to end up with health issues later on down the road. Same thing with planning. If you don't plan your schedule today, tomorrow, you might be okay. You might be okay for this week, but eventually if you go long enough without planning, you're going to end up somewhere in life where you do not want to be because you weren't taking preventative measures. So it gets you ahead of the curve. Should do's are things like starting early on your homework that's due next week, or personal development. Like I already said, phoning demos, like you should be making phone calls to get demos booked up for Saturday, for a couple days from now. You should be doing demos this week. If you don't phone today, you can phone tomorrow. If you don't phone tomorrow, you can phone the next day, but eventually you go long enough without phoning and you're not going to have a paycheck. So you get the idea here. Now, the relationships between should do's and have to's is very important. Most people in the world are only focused on taking care of have to's and should do's. They're really good. When they think of making a schedule, they put all the have to's and put all the need to do's. Excuse me. And they do not put the should do's in there. Right? They put in the have to's and the need to's, but they don't put the should do's, right? They tell themselves, instead of putting it in their schedule, they tell themselves, oh, I should eat better. I should exercise. I should plan. I should probably read more books. And then they never do. They literally should all over themselves, so to speak. And I should do demos, right? I should do phoning. I should, like I said, start on next week's homework. And this is where vector guilt comes in. You guys know what I'm talking about, by the way. Vector guilt, it's that exhausting part of being an entrepreneur, right? Where you can't forget about work, right? You worry about doing demos, you worry about making the phone calls, but you procrastinate making the phone calls, but you're worried about it and you kind of like ignore it. Kind of, you do other things that you say are more important. Well, I have to do this right now, so I'm not going to make phone calls. And then you kind of like put it off, but it's still nagging at you in the back of your mind. And then another day goes by and another day goes by and you still don't make phone calls. You don't get the demos booked up, but you're like, oh, but I got to do my demos this week. And then you get to the end of the week and you're worried, you're exhausted, and you're anxious. And you go, man, I'm so stressed out. I've been worried all week long about the job, about doing demos. Oh, and then like my paycheck sucks. So I just don't think that I can do this because you're worried about making phone calls instead of actually doing them. You're like, man, this vector, this just stresses me out too much. No, you're just not managing your time very well. By the way, it's not vector, it's you. And I mean this lovingly, by the way. We all come through this personal growth of being able to manage our time. You do the same thing with homework, right? We all do the same thing with homework. And being able to manage your time is some of the tips that I'm going to teach you are really going to help you be able to execute better on your homework, on your family life, on your other tasks, on your vector tasks. And it's going to help you be a rock star, but you got to implement it. So those are the should do's. Should do's are extremely important for your schedule. Should do's are really what create the champions in life. Should do's are really where the bread is earned and success is accelerated. So the next one I'm going to talk about is the want to's. Putting things you want to do in your schedule is so important. A lot of people think that making a schedule is like, all right, I'm gonna tell myself when I'm gonna get up early. I got to put my doctor's appointments, got to put my homework. All right, I've got it all in there. But they don't plan the fun stuff. That's also so important. Here's the thing: if like putting the want tos in your schedule are just as important, and here's why: if you do not put the time to do things in your schedule, put the want tos in your schedule, then the want tos will then take over your should dos and your need tos. For example, have you ever like worked on homework? Like you've got an assignment due, you go at it for 3 hours, you're hyper focused on this assignment, and you go, man, I need a break. And then you watch Netflix for 4 hours. And then you're like, oh crap, now I'm behind on my homework again. So you do homework again for another 3 hours, and you're like, oh man, I need a break. And then your friend's like, hey, let's go hang out. Let's go play games, or maybe they want to go to the bar or something like that. And then you go do that, and you're kind of like pushing off that assignment in the back of your mind, right? You're procrastinating, and you bounce back and forth between the like, here's what I need to do, oh, but I need a break, I deserve it, here's my want tos. And the problem with that is it always leaves out the should do's. And again, should do's is where the bread is earned and where the success is accelerated. And so so want tos are important to plan in your schedule. You'll be way more effective when you know you have time in your schedule to do the things that you want to do. Every Saturday morning, I look forward to going mountain biking. I like to mountain bike. That's what I do. And I know that I get to work hard during the week so that Saturday morning when I get up, I get to go ride the trail, and I know that I completed what I completed, my tasks for the week, to be able to do that. I do that in the morning times as well. Or for example, when I get to go on dates with my wife, I work really hard during the day, so then in the evening I get to go on dates with my wife. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't relax, right? Of course you should relax, right? As long as it is planned, right? Every bit of your schedule should be filled up. There should be no blanks in your schedule. Also, you can do nothing. You're like, but Jesse, sometimes I like to do nothing. That's great. Do nothing as long as it's planned. When you successfully schedule everything into your schedule, right down to brushing your teeth, you reach a whole new level of productivity, and you can live stress-free about the things in your life because you're not stressing about all the things that you have to do. Right? A lot of times representatives I've noticed that I've worked with, and I do this too, we have all these things in our head that we know that we need to do, and it drives us crazy because we feel overwhelmed and we feel stressed, we feel anxious, and that anxiety can lead to depression, by the way. Because we have all these things, these abstract thoughts in our head that like we've got to do, we've got to take care of. Here's the thing: if you write them down on a to-do list, you feel a lot better because the list looks a lot more manageable. If you take that to-do list and put that in your schedule, that's when you're going to be an extremely successful person, and you'll minimize your stress because of the knowledge that you have the time in your schedule to complete the important tasks that are weighing on your mind. The better you get at that, the more effective you're going to be and the more stress-free you can live. the more successful you're going to be with Vector, with school, with your family, with your entrepreneurial ventures in the future, with your other jobs. Planning out everything is incredibly important. And guess what? It's actually extremely motivating. Because I don't know about you, sometimes, like when I've got all these anxieties and these thoughts of things that I need to do weighing down on my mind, it's actually demotivating. And what I want to do, and sometimes it's just easier to shut down, and it's easier just to go, yeah, it's just easier to try to forget about all those things. And then the last minute, you're scrambling to take care of things and you're working under pressure. If they're all in your schedule, you can look at everything and go, I can do all of this, but darn it, I got to hustle because each task is incredibly important because I have no loose extra time in my schedule because you plan everything out. So that's one of the important things of setting up your schedule the right way and making sure that your schedule is full of everything. Your have-tos, again, which are your things that have a specific time and an immediate negative consequence. If you don't show up to class, that's a negative consequence. Need tos have no specific time, but they do have a negative consequence that's pretty short term, that is pretty immediate. For example, if you go for a day without sleep, you're probably gonna, not be very energized the next day. You go a day without eating, kind of the same thing, right? And then there's the should do's, which like I said, that's where the bread is really earned and the acceleration in your skills and in your life is made, because that's the personal development, that's the preventative planning, that's the preventative measures, right? That's the personal development, growing now instead of being forced to grow later, which you can't grow all at once. It's about that consistency. And then the want tos, because if you don't plan the want tos in your schedule, you will make excuses to put want tos in your schedules over should do's and the need tos. So it's very important that you put those in there. I'm going to give you some other tips on time management and making a schedule that I found helpful over the years. But first of all, let me explain this. It's called Parkinson's Law. And Parkinson's Law is the adage that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. For example, let's say that I bought you some plane tickets to go to the Bahamas, right? I've got you plane tickets to go to the Bahamas. Global pandemic's over, no problems, and I give you 2 days to pack. How long is it going to take you to pack? You probably think about packing for 2 days and then pack at the end. You basically kind of take 2 days to pack. You're probably not going to pack your bag in advance and 2 days before and then just sit on your bag. You're probably going to wait till the last, fill up that whole time. If I said you have 2 hours to pack, it would take you 2 hours to pack to be able to go to the airport and be on a plane on your way to the Bahamas. And if I give you 2 minutes to pack, you'd run into your house, grab a bag, throw a toothbrush in there, grab a swimsuit, an extra change of clothes, and you'd be on your way out the door and saying, hey, I guess we got to figure it out on the way there. And it would take you 2 minutes to pack. Because the amount of time that you give an activity is how much time that activity will take. For example, some of you say that I just work better under pressure. No, you don't. You work better with extreme focus that comes from being under pressure. Okay, you could have that same focus if you had more self-discipline. And you do have that focus when you know that you have other things in your schedule that are important. For example, when your schedule is full and you have 0 blank space in your schedule because you have your have tos, your should do's, your want tos, and all those things are important to you and that reflects in your schedule, you don't have time to goof off because you've got another task right afterwards. In fact, I loved making sure that I had demos booked in the evening when I was a full-time student, because that means that I had to be done with my homework by a certain time, because otherwise I got to be on a demo. And it actually, instead of making the excuse of well, I've got to take care of my homework's taking longer, I guess I can't do any demos this week. It's no, I've got to make sure my homework gets done because I've given myself a certain amount of time to do the homework. Now, I was always generous with that, by the way. I usually took the amount of time that I thought I needed to do an assignment and multiplied it by, added 50% or even multiplied it by 2, just to make sure I had plenty of time. And if I got it done early, then I could do other things that were fun. So I always put kind of rewards in my schedule, so to speak. So a couple keys for time management is or a couple of tips from me is, number one, I love Gary Vee, vision and execution. And let me give you a couple steps on this. Number one, know your outcome. Know what it is that you want in your life. And if you don't know, sit down and journal. One of the things that I do when I feel really stressed and I feel overwhelmed is I sit down and I start writing. I just write that out. And I throw it, I vomit it all on paper, so to speak. And then I look at it and I go, what's important to me? What are my priorities? And I take those things and I make sure my schedule reflects those priorities. And make sure that the things that I want out of my life, out of my week, out of my month, out of my year are reflected in my schedule. And by knowing your outcome and making sure that your schedule is in alignment with your values and the principles and the things that are important to you, that give you energy and bring you value and purpose to life, that's when you don't procrastinate, because everything in your schedule you know is important to you. Here's another tip for you. Share your schedule. Share your schedule with your inner circle. Share it with your manager. Like, I have multiple Google schedules that are shared with me from my top representatives. And I share my schedule with my office staff so they can look and honestly, I'm okay that they see that I have personal things going on so that they know when I am going to be and not going to be in the office and when I'm going to be doing certain things. Share it with your mom, share it with your girlfriend, share it with your boyfriend, share it with your roommate, share it with your best friend, whatever. But it's a good idea to share your schedule with your inner circle for a couple of reasons. One, if you have an objective and goals and you've shared that vision with those people, they're going to hold you accountable. It's actually really nice knowing that the people in your inner circle have your back because they know what you should be doing in your schedule. It's nice knowing that when my wife looks at my schedule at work, she hops on there and she looks at it, and when she gives me a call during work, she's like, "Oh yeah, you're doing this right now, right? How's that going?" And it's nice knowing that she's holding me accountable. I'm like, "Oh, actually, I need to I need to shift gears because that's what I should be doing right now." Right? And it's also less likely that they'll try and hijack your schedule, because we've all had that before, right? Your best friend tries to get you to go hang out with them, or your mom's like, "Hey, look, I need you to come do this." And if your schedule is shared with mom, and mom looks at your schedule, she goes, "Oh, I see that you've got important things going on in your schedule." By the way, that's so important with vector. By the way, because your mom, most of you have probably been sitting at home all summer long on the phone, in your room, on the computer, and your mom's like, "Are you working? Are you not working?" But if you share your schedule with your inner circle, your mom, your family, your girlfriend, right, those pressures all of a sudden kind of are relieved, because then mom's not like, "Hey, go do this, go mow the lawn." Because if she can look at your schedule and see you got demos booked up, she's like, "Oh, he's actually working. He or she's actually working, right? You're working." And so it's going to be less likely they're going to hijack your schedule. All right, next thing. Commit to your schedule. Are you motivated or are you committed? Because motivation is fleeting. By the way, we've all felt that. We've all been there, right? We felt lack of motivation, but when you're committed to the outcomes and not just interested in your outcome, that's when exciting things happen. And then finally, guess what? You're going to screw it up. You're going to mess up your schedule. You're going to be off pace for hitting your goals, whether that's a campaign goal, a week goal, a homework goal, a GPA goal, a savings goal. If you're going to fail, but most importantly, you need to forgive yourself, replan, realign, and then execute, like I said, and recommit to your goal. Don't change the goal, adjust your approach. And one of my favorite quotes, by the way, is work on purpose, play on purpose, rest on purpose. Do not let yourself or anybody else waste your time. By the way, can I give you a quick little tip on should do's that just came to my mind? Should do's, you know what should do's are also things. Another should do that you should put in your schedule is to call your mama. Call family, call people in your inner circle and let them know that you love them. Spend 5 minutes doing that a week, right? Put a little 5-minute plug in your schedule. Schedule it of like, I'm going to call my mom at this time and chat with her for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, maybe more minutes. But if you do that once a week, again, that's a preventative measure and it's a maintenance measure, and you'll be able to balance a lot of the spinning plates by putting those should do's in your schedule. And then you have an excellent relationship with your mom. You have by the way, another should do should be going over your finances. You should be making a budget. You do those and you're going to live an extremely successful and a very happy life. All right. Finally, some thoughts on procrastination as I wrap up my talk here. I did a little bit of research on why we procrastinate, and I actually found some things that I thought were really insightful. So a couple of things on procrastination. Number one, people who have a problem with procrastination. By the way, we all procrastinate. All of us do. But let me tell you right now, it is not a problem with time management. It is a problem with emotional management. Here's the thing. They've done studies where they gave people the same task to do. They gave them two tasks, and the human beings naturally would do the one that was framed to be the most exciting or the funnest task first and leave the distasteful task to the end. But when they reframed the distasteful task to be the more exciting task, then human beings would always do that, no matter what it was. So you don't have a problem with procrastination. You have a problem with emotional management. Procrastination, the cycle of irrational and chronic procrastination, comes from the inability to manage negative moods around a task. So if I may, I'd like to give you a couple ways that I've found that help with procrastination. Number one that you can write down is, but by the way, so in summary, let me just say this. The more we practice our ability to manage our negativity towards a task, the better we become at execution. Say that one more time. The more we practice our ability to manage our negativity towards a certain task, homework, phone time, demos, whatever, the better we become at execution of that task. You know why you procrastinate phone time? It's because you think it sucks. Stop telling yourself it sucks. Phone time doesn't suck. Which leads me to my tips. 3 ways that I have found that that really help with managing that negativity. Number 1 is embrace the suck. Practice embracing the suck. So if you really do think phoning sucks, embrace it. That's a Navy SEAL term, by the way, is learning how to embrace the suck. So practice other ways of embracing the suck. Take cold showers in the morning. That is revolutionary. Because when you get up in the morning and you crank that thing on cold and you stand there and you practice the mental fortitude to embracing like, wow, this sucks. And you embrace it and you start telling yourself, you know what, actually it's not that bad. Actually, it's not that cold. You learn that you can do hard crap and you can be successful at it. That changes your perspective on everything else that you do with your tasks, with life, and with Vector. Number 2, practice gratitude. I don't have to do homework. I get to do homework. I get the opportunity to receive an education. I get the opportunity to phone and make money. I get the opportunity to have a flexible job and do presentations in an economy where people are losing their job. Gratitude helps a lot. And then finally, realize that you do also have, if you fill your schedule up all the way, you have a lot of other crap you got to get done. And so you really don't have time to procrastinate. And finally, I want to wrap up with becoming an architect of your schedule. Well, let me read you this quote by Tony Robbins. The fact is, you're not a manager of circumstance. You're the architect of your life's experience. And becoming an architect of your schedule helps you live your best life with all the things that are important to you. It will help you be successful in all the things in life and balance all of the spinning plates, so to speak. So go be the architect of your life, make the most out of it, and really maximize the time that you have in your schedule. Plan everything in there, the fun time, the hard things, the everything. And when you plan your schedule and you make the most out of every minute of life, that's where you really suck the marrow out of life and you really take advantage of the opportunity that you've been given to exist in this universe and to make a difference. And I look forward to seeing you, hopefully meeting you at future conferences in person, and very good luck. Have an excellent rest of your summer rolling into the fall with school or whatever it is that you're doing, and go crush it.